Could I have the roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron,
Here.
Julie Simpson,
Here.
Jeff Bard,
Here.
Robin Cleek,
Here.
Wes Pullen here, Matt Jacobs,
Here.
Sonali Patel.
Here. Any public comment? Anybody wishes to comment? Going once, twice, done. We have presentation by PTO, by Ms. Pallet, Ms. Sagam, and Wendy. Alman.
Oh, here. On behalf of the PTO, we are here to present a check for the money that we raised this past school year in the amount of $77,000. We're down a little bit this year. We lost the Target Take Charge of Education program, and so we were trying to find ways to make it up, but I think we're on the right track. So hopefully in the next couple years, we'll make up that difference. In addition to the $77,000, we also provided $15,000 in free books to our schools, along with $8,500 in programming. So the total is about $100,500. So this is really all I have, but before I go, Katie Agam she's our treasurer, she'll be presenting the check. And I'd like to introduce Wendy Elman.
Thanks.
She will be taking over as PTO president on July 1st.
Welcome.
She has a son who attends Elementary North, and he'll be in 3rd grade.
Yes.
And she's also chaired the Art Adventure program at Elementary North for the last 2 years. So
Correct.
You're in good hands, and thank you all, and this is it for me, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Beth, for everything that you did for us.
Pleasure.
Oh, we don't have any presentations. The next is Finance 2017-2018 budget by Mr. Brad.
Okay. All right. Our 2017-18, we need to move forward a year. Tonight we'll review the tentative budget, and this is our first look at the budget. It is a fluid document, meaning we have changes coming in daily. I got a few today. When we hire a new person, we update the salary and the budget, and that will be reflected in the final budget. As we get more information from the state on the revenue side, we will see this also change the final budget document. You will have another chance to discuss the tentative budget this coming in 2 weeks on June 26th. We will make our budget then available to the public per state guidelines on June 27th, and we will make it available, information available in the paper that it is online and available if somebody wants to pick up a hard copy here at the district office. Will be on display for the requisite 30 days, and we'll have a budget hearing on August 14th when the public will be able to comment on the budget. We will at that point have our final budget available, and that will be approved by the board at the September 11th meeting. So it can be filed with the state and the Regional Office of Education by September 30th. Our overall tentative budget shows a deficit of $13,210,965. This reflects the use of $12 million out of fund balance for the Sullivan Center Kindergarten. I'm going to refer to that in that way. We haven't obviously named it, but that's how we're kind of referring to it in our office. It's also exclusive of capital projects and transfers related to these. The capital projects are part of our improvements to the facilities and health life safety projects that we have taken out general obligations bond for over 8 years ago. And we are spending that down, and that reflects in part as a deficit because we took that money in many years ago. There are revenues of approximately $87 million and expenditures of just over $100 million. This may seem quite inflated from previous years. It's primarily due to that $12 million. The way it goes is it's already in our working cash. We will expend it out of working cash and move it into our capital projects fund because that is where we're going to be paying for the building out of. So it comes in as revenue into working cash or into capital projects, and then it goes out as revenue. So it's double booked on the expenditure side. It's just the way that school finance books it. So it's hyperinflating that by about 24 million. Without that project going on, our budget would be right in the neighborhood of $76 million. And again, remember, 14 million of that is related to on behalf payments. Again, we take money out of the teachers' checks for TRS. We hold that in our revenue account, and then we write a check in that exact amount to TRS at the end of the. It's a booking. We don't actually write. We pass along that money to TRS throughout the year. So you'll see in the budget 14 million on both sides of that booking entry. So if you take those items out, our budget really is around 62 million, including debt service.
Do we have an estimate or projection for cash flow, that 12 million, since it most likely won't all be spent in the next year's budget?
Well, we booked it in all in next year. It was the thought of the architect that it would probably be a great deal. The only thing that we might have left is furniture and fixtures and equipment, which will be pretty minor. So the thought was that most of it would be spent early on, other than the closeout piece. Okay. I mean, obviously, we wanted to build it in just in case we get an early start. If there is a mild winter, and they can get a shovel in the ground, and we have been given that the soonest estimate that we'll be able to open is for fall of 2018. That's a very optimistic view, but we built it in the budget that way. So we have a slight surplus, operating surplus of $47,597 in our operating funds. When you exclude the Sullivan Center Kindergarten, again, the operating funds are the education fund, operations and maintenance, transportation, IMRF, and the retirement fund. Those funds not included in the operating fund are the debt service fund and capital projects, as well as tort. There is a glossary in there, kind of indicating what the different uses of the funds are, and I'm happy to answer any questions related to that. As far as our revenue side, our taxes for 2017 will be comprised of the 2016 levy that we levied last year, which is 0.7%, and this coming levy will most likely be in the neighborhood of 2.1%. That was the CPI from December of 15 to December of 16, which affects our next half of our next year's budget. The first half of our taxes that we'll receive in September are based on that 0.7% that was extended, and you paid recently at the beginning of June, and you'll pay another bill in September as part of your taxes, and that's reflecting the 0.7% CPI. We've seen a slight decrease in new growth this past year. We have discussed anticipated new growth in Cuneo, but it's not yet known how much of this will be completed in time to affect our levy for next year. So we'll get a good idea when we go to levy. That's usually when they get an idea of the new growth. When they go out and do the assessment and they get all the new real estate holdings on the books in September and October. And then when we go out to levy, we'll have a better idea of how much of that new growth. But most likely, we've been told that Cuneo won't have really houses probably sold until late fall, early winter. The CPI of 2.1 this last year is slightly higher than the 10-year historical average of 1.8%. So we're finally on the uptick a little bit, right on the verge of when the state will probably be telling us we need to have a tax freeze, is when we're starting to see higher than normal CPI. The state is still at a standstill in their budget talks, if you've done any of the reading from downstate in Springfield. So it's unknown what our state funding will be. We've had the habit of writing in the past several years stagnant growth or stagnance at the state level, and that's pretty much what's held true as far as the state funding level. There's lots of bills being bandied about in Springfield. Many of them relate to new funding models. There was some misinformation in May regarding the funding model, indicating that we would be a big loser in funding. We've been told that that's not true, that with the SB1, nobody would see a decrease in their school funding, but any additional funding would go to the poorer districts. So we wouldn't see a whole lot of new money from the state, but we shouldn't see a decrease if SB1 goes through.
And with the SB1 models, we do get a little bit more.
Yeah, it's slight. It certainly benefits the poor districts, and we're not considered a poor district, obviously. But we shouldn't see a loss of what I think they had in there of 2.8 million, which was very significant. So we built in general state aid slightly rising, obviously partly attributable to our increase in enrollment. We have not built any of the proposals before the legislation, including property tax freezes or pension cost shifts. If there is something that comes down the line, my guess is it won't affect us starting 7/1. I think most of these proposals, it's too late in the game to make any changes to that at this point in time. I think they would end up being on the books for the next fiscal year, be adjusted. If there are changes, we can obviously make an adjustment into the final budget. Federal funding is up about 14%, but this again only translates to about $324,000 in additional funding. Some slight increases in Title I and bilingual grants. We are seeing a slight increase in our local funding due to fee increases. Some of the fee increases we had passed this past year, as well as payment for the personalized learning initiative, some increase in some lunch fees are increasing our local revenue slightly. We are seeing some better payment rates as well on some existing late payments. And so we are seeing a slight increase in local funds. On the expenditure side, we are seeing a overall operating expenditures increase of approximately 2.35% versus last year. Pretty modest. We see an increase in our IMRF rate, a decrease in our IMRF rate. We've seen that decrease over the last several years. It peaked around almost 14%, and it's been going down slightly, partly due to the fact that we paid some accrued actuarial liability, unfunded actuarial liability. Several years ago, we put $500,000 in fund balance towards that, and that's helped drive our rate down slightly. And then obviously with the stock market coming back, especially this year, we should see that reflected in next year's rate quite a bit if their investment plan is doing well. So it may even go below 12% starting for the following fiscal year. We are continuing to see our benefits rise at a lower rate. We've hired, obviously, you've seen the staff we're hiring is a newer staff, with less experience, and thus they have less experience as far as healthcare and less needs. And we're seeing an overall increase of 2.2% in our insurance rates. This is being driven lower by our PPO, only rising 1.4%. Our HMO plan is even decreasing. We're seeing a 0.6% decrease in our HMO. So there's starting to be a gap in there. We have done some education of our staff regarding HMO and PPO and the differences to hopefully drive some of those folks. One of our issues is that we provide 100% single coverage. So if you don't have to make a choice, most people will go with a PPO. So it's something to maybe think about looking at, is providing some incentive to move to the HMO in our next negotiations. Our dental rose this year by 4.4%, which is a little bit higher than we've normally seen. Obviously, it's related to claims history, but we're happy with our cooperative. It's successfully helped maintain our costs. We were able to bring some funds back to the district and the staff this last year with a benefit holiday. We received $300,000 back into the district from our co-op. We did put it into a reserve fund that's set aside for future claims if we were to leave the cooperative. They recommend that you have at least 3 months coverage in there, and we're probably at about 2.5 months of coverage. So we put that money in there to build it up to that three month level. So if we do ever choose to lose the cooperative, we won't take any. So there's about $880,000 at this point in time. So we hope to see continual really reining in the cost of our benefits, because that is a large line item, approximately $5.5 million, $6 million in the benefit line for health and dental. That doesn't include life and accidental death and dismemberment. We continue to operate in a fiscally conservative way and remain in strong financial condition. You'll see a copy of the financial profile in there, and you can see that we have retained a highest level financial recognition of 3.55 out of 4.0. And most folks use the ROE does a conversion and actually takes our payments due from the state and factors that in. And when you factor that in, we rise to 3.9 out of 4. The only area we're lagging in is our long-term debt ratio, which we really don't have control over at this point due to the bonding that was done back in over 10 years ago for Town Line and dual language. And so as we pay down that debt, our long-term debt ratio goes down, and our rating on this will go up, but we have to hit a certain threshold before that will change, and it'll be a few years. And obviously, if we do choose to go out for referendum and do take out more bonding authority, that will affect that. We've also just received our tentative financial report from Moody's, and we remained a AA2 rating, which is excellent. We've had that for the past several years, and this will allow us to receive some good interest rates if we do need to go out for bonding authority. Obviously, we are paying an Illinois penalty. You've probably heard of that, being in the state of Illinois with our finances in such disarray without having a budget for 2 years. There is about a 0.5% penalty that any governmental institution that is bonded pays because of the status of our state. So those are things to think about when you look at our state funding. We have increased our funding level for curricular needs. We had increased that line item from $300,000 to $500,000. When I walked in the door in 2010, it was $100,000, and it was that way for several years. And then when Lieutenant Brown came in, we did attempt to bring that up to $300,000, and we did that 2014 through 2017. And we had $500,000 for the first time this last year. And our ultimate goal when we started talking about this many years ago was to move it up to $750,000. So we've been able to do that this year in the budget, and we'll watch that yearly and make sure it's adequate, make sure that we're spending it in the proper way that the board would like us to spend, and meeting the needs of the students is obviously our primary goal. So when you look at that as a ratio of our budget, it's in the 1% range, which is still fairly low when you think about it. The additional money for curriculum, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think you're about to get there. Just share kind of what we think are some of the planned targets.
Here's some of the targeted use of the funds. 6th through 8th grade social studies resources. They haven't received new materials in over 10 years. So we're investing in Pearson, which is providing digital resources and the ability to translate those resources as well for non-English speaking students. District-wide social emotional learning resource. We're going to be using Second Step, which we've talked about many times at our administrative team meetings, and that's what and we visited other districts and seen how it in use, and we had staff involved in that decision-making process. So we're very excited to bring that program in to pre-K 5. The standards have been embedded into our units of instruction, but they've been our staff and teachers and administrators have been asking for a comprehensive resource to address these standards. Writing resources for K through 5. We're going to be purchasing writing units, study support writing instruction for K through 5 classrooms from School-Wide Incorporated. And then a math intervention, a non-linguistic math intervention for a school of dual language will be purchased called ST Math. And this is coming from a need to find interventions which are not language dependent. And Dr. Sarali would like to scale this to the entire district should it be worthwhile. So we're going to evaluate it this year. We're also continuing to pay for a district-wide science resource that was purchased last year. And we are able to split that cost between last year and this year, hoping that we would see some additional funding this year. So we're paying for half of that this year. And then it's important to remember that as we transition to digital resources, some of the curriculum budget is encumbered by annual subscriptions to items such as Discovery Learning, BrainPop, News ELA, et cetera. So we analyze usage yearly and crunch that data to make sure we're only purchasing subscriptions for the teachers who are using them, and that they are using them as we want to see them used. So anything else I forgot, Dr. Sarali? Great.
I have a question.
Yes.
We said, and this might be a question for Dr. Sarali. We said writing units for K through 5. What about 6 through 8?
So right now, we've been looking at these units for a while, and right now the budget is looking like it's only going to afford me K-5, but 6-8 has a resource they've had for 2 or 3 years called Study Sync, which offers writing support. It's a kind of a comprehensive ELA resource that's available to all of our teachers in 6 through 8. And we've we just did an additional training on the last Institute Day to make sure that all teachers understand and are aware of the units of instruction that are within Study Sync and 6 to 8. So they've had a resource for the last couple of years, although it's digital. I mean, it was sort of the best thing that we could find, but it was really dependent on tech. And so I think that's why we did the additional training. When they get all the Chromebooks in, kids have the access to the tech more often. I think we'll see it used a lot more often in 6-8.
Does the curriculum include resources for the dual language expansion, which probably need to be
Yes.
purchased before?
Yes.
next year?
Study Sync has been transitioning slowly over to Spanish materials and translating a lot of their things. So we're about on the same pace for that, for the middle school expansion. Yeah. But we are also writing the advanced Spanish curriculum, rewriting it. And we have teachers in this summer working on that curriculum as well. So the units of instruction will be updated too. So it's important to remember that all the resources that we talked about are supplemental resources to the Guaranteed Viable Curriculum, the units that are in online and that the teachers have written. And so 6 to 8 social studies, all the math resources, science now, all the science resources, the ELA resources at 6-8. Some things are district-wide. Everyone has them. But they're still supplemental to the units that have been written by the teachers. And so teachers can use them as they see they need to based on the needs of the class. But everyone has those resources. Does that make sense?
So one of the resources Brad mentioned hasn't been replaced in like 10 years. How often typically do you replace stuff under curriculum?
Well, that's the interesting point about digital now. So in 10, 15 years ago, you could purchase textbooks and then you could sit on that for a while and not have to go through a refresh cycle because you had the print materials. And sometimes they lasted for a while. Now that everything's digital, you don't pay for the materials anymore. You don't pay for the print materials, you pay for the digital materials. And you pay for the subscriptions for the students and for the back end, the Connect Ed system, which is sort of that students, dashboard for the materials. And that's the price for that. And so when that runs out, which is typically a 6 to 7 year bundle, and they bundle in the print materials for you, when that stops, you're done. So you have to re-up and go ahead with another cycle. So math is coming up next. Math will be our next one that, once, and it's 6 to 8 math will come first, that subscription will run out and we'll need to look again at math materials and whether or not we want to stay with Glencoe. But that's the price of having those materials that can be updated and translated and available all the time, is that now you can't purchase a resource and just have it for a while. So that's what I was talking about when I say some of the funds are encumbered before we even start the school year, because there's things that have to be planned for annual subscriptions. And then, 4 or 5 years out, I've got a plan of what's coming up that we're going to need to refresh.
But then Brad mentioned that the $750,000 budget, we don't expect to be increasing anytime soon. So that will sustain this cycle of replacing this and the next year replacing something else.
I'm working on it. I mean, I think as we look at these units and as the units are refined and as we look at open source resources, because there are some things out there, there's a model math curriculum and a bundle of resources that the state provides that have to do with math that are very comprehensive and that our teachers make a lot of use of. So when it comes to K-5 math, again, we may be making a different choice, because of the reliance that they have on those open source resources. There are some things out there that we can look at, but I'm planning on that amount of money for a while now.
Thanks.
All right. Moving on to technology. The last year's budget saw us place a priority on technology. Our infrastructure needed many upgrades to bring us up to speed with our wireless system and servers to begin our personalized learning environment. We're beginning to see a flow of E-rate funds once again, and we are in the midst of deploying our new phone system, which will be up and running before the end of the summer. We're seeing those being deployed this month, in fact, and we'll be doing some training with our staff and get those in place for the beginning of the school year. We continue to utilize our operating funds to make lease payments for our recent purchase of MacBook Airs for our staff, as well as ones that we purchased 2 years ago for students. We're in the midst of a lease on those. We also have a lease payment for the Dell Chromebooks that we had brought in for our parts, and then we have just added an additional lease this last month for our Dell Chromebooks for our personalized learning initiative. So those are recurring expenses. Most likely, when some of those items come off in a couple of years, they'll be replaced because obviously technology has a finite lifespan. Instructional spending has seen an increase of 5.54%. Most of this is related to salary and benefit costs, as well as positions we've added and some movement in from instructional support. You'll see the instructional support line item has gone down slightly. We're seeing a slight decrease in that line item, in that category of 3.29%, related to some shifts in staffing between the two areas. All of the approved staffing has been included in the budget, as well as 4 contingent positions, 4 contingent teaching positions for any growth in class sizes that need to be addressed prior to the beginning of the school year. Again, this year we are not levying in the IMRF fund. We brought that up to speed a couple of years ago due to an audit, and we separated those funds out from our regular retirement funds. They both are maintained in the same 50 account number, but we separated them into 2 different account numbers, and we're still spending down the funds that we moved into that account several years ago. We will probably reduce our levy to 0 for the next couple of years and then pay that down. It's become, again, it still continues to be difficult with slim increases in revenue. Again, this last year, between this coming year, we'll have a split between a 0.7% CPI and somewhere in the neighborhood of a 2.1% CPI. So that averages out to 1.4%. And when you have contracts in place and other things increasing at higher than that inflationary rate, then we need to maintain our costs in line. This can't be done without carefully looking at our expenditures each year. We do that every year. The Sullivan Center kindergarten is a major undertaking that we've been preparing for. So it's imperative to ensure we continue that our operating expenses are matched by our revenues. Additional staffing needs continue to limit the ability to find other areas of the budget. We just have many kids coming, and we need to make sure we're meeting their needs. I'm confident that the $750,000 that we added, that we have increased our curriculum budget to, will be a sufficient level to meet our students' needs for the next couple of years. And then technology is ever changing. It's difficult to determine what the budget may be for this in the coming years. If we looked at this 4 or 5 years ago, we wouldn't have seen necessarily a one-to-one environment or the infrastructure needs that we've seen needed to be input into our system. The intent to grow our personalized learning environment will need to be modeled over the next year to determine if it is sustainable and viable, and if it is expanded to grade levels lower than 6 through 8, and how that's done will have a big bearing on future years' budgets if we roll it out one class level at a time, or whether we do a major rollout for all grade levels or several grade levels. Overall, I'm confident we have a budget that is addressing our students' needs and the financial needs of the district. Happy to answer any questions at this time. Again, we'll have another review and be able to answer any questions at the next board meeting as well if I can't answer them here tonight.
I'll start. I have one. You said you had 4 contingent positions built in for teaching. As we had seen, and this is just more for understanding, last year we had some student come in and we had to provide a 1-to-1 aid. So when situations like those come up, where does where do we, is it budgeted? Where do we, where are we pulling that from, and how does that work out?
We can take money out of that contingent fund. I mean, the $240,000 is set aside at the rate of 4 teachers. But if we end up needing 3 teachers and 2 assistants, it would come out of those contingencies. And then if we had to go beyond those contingencies, we look. Oftentimes, we'll also see kids move out so we might exchange a one-on-one for a 1-to-1 aid or another 1-to-1 student that might be leaving. If we happen to get 3 in and we need 3 one-to-1 assistants, then we would have to go to the contingency first and then possibly look at other areas where we could cut it.
And if we can't find it in contingency because we've used it up with just our general growth and stuff, then which fund do we pull it out from?
Well, it would be in the education. It would be in the education fund.
And deficit, and we'll go in the deficit.
And we might look at the grants that fund like special ed or ELL. If it's a program, the student that's needs from that program, we might look at some way to find some dollars.
And then we might also have to tighten some other areas of the budget down to that.
Anybody else?
I have a kind of general question. I think it's great that we've been increasing this curriculum budget over the years. Are we in line with other similar districts in Lake County for what percentage of our budget we are spending on curriculum and things like that?
We're probably still low, even at 750,000 percentage wise. I know many other districts spend over $1 million and they may have half the budget we have. So I would say we're still low. We can certainly do some research if that's requested on seeing what they're. It's hard because some folks might code digital resources under technology.
Right. Well, and also,
so-
I mean, it's not so black and white. Having a bigger
isn't.
budget doesn't mean you have a better delivery of the curriculum. I mean, it's not
No, it doesn't.
doesn't always automatically translate, but I was just curious if.
I would guess that we're still below the midpoint.
Okay. Thanks.
$1 million would probably be where 750 was the target, if you recall, for last couple years. The next target really is $1 million, would probably put you in a balance of availability of what we need for the number of students, especially as we're projected to grow in students too.
Quick question on the bond and interest fund. So we know what we need to pay for every year, right? What you got there. So is there any reason why for 16, 17, our receipts for bond and interest was almost $500,000 less than what we had to pay?
Yeah, it's all in the timing.
Okay.
Because we remember we had that issue a couple of years ago where we paid
One extra
we
payment.
paid we paid the check on 26
Yeah.
and
Okay.
it was dated 7/1 and they cashed it in 6/30. So we've accelerated our bond payments. Whoever took those bonds out wasn't very nice to the business manager. I think it was probably the business manager who set up the date. But a 7/1 date does not work for a school district because that's the beginning of our fiscal year. So if you write a check, the only way around it is to wire the money.
On that date.
And there's an expense to wiring money, so I like to avoid that expense. So what we've done is we've shifted those payments. We book them and pay them in June, right before they're due, like days before they're due. So after you approve the bills on the 26th, we'll mail the check to make sure it gets in on time because we don't want a late payment as well. And so there is some discrepancy in what we collect and what we disperse because of that.
Anybody else?
And after you had a time to look at it, feel free to email questions through Nick. I'm happy to answer any before our next meeting, and if not, we'll review this again on the 26th.
What's included in the capital projects other than the kindergarten center?
It was
Is
that
it
list
just-
of summer projects
Okay.
that we did, that we shared with you.
For
I'm
this
happy to share
summer
that
or
again.
for also next?
It's for this
year?
summer.
Okay.
It's for this, mostly for this summer.
Is
Most
that-
of next summer projects will be paid out of the next fiscal year. We generally start the projects when school's out, so we don't start seeing bills in until the end of June or beginning of July when we start paying.
Is our vehicle a part of the capital,
Is what?
the vehicle maintenance or the renewal?
Vehicle? The vehicle is actually part of the operations budget. The
So
new
it's not
vehicle
part
that we'll
of
be
the
discussing
capital.
tonight. No, it's not part of capital
Yeah,
budget.
okay, so it's
It's
just,
part of our operating budget.
okay, so that's the part of,
Yeah.
this is just.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
Ma'am.
No? Okay. Next is CEDAW. Matt, any?
It's gonna be quick. It was
That's
a very fast meeting. We met at like 7 and we're out of there before 8.
How do they do that?
Mostly the election of a governing board officers, or a couple that were retiring, or one was leaving to be a superintendent in Southern Illinois. We have executive board members as well. Couple local ones. Libertyville is on the executive board, as well as Grays Lake. We did have a special recognition presentation, which was kind of neat. There is a student from Gages Lake School that actually attends Vernon Hills High School, and had a one-to-one technology. She had like a tablet that she could punch in all sorts of emoticons, basically, so she could communicate with people. It was really cool. So that was one. Other than that, it was budget talk. They are running on about a deficit for the next 3 years projected. They've had to do some major maintenance work for the roads up by the campus, which has taken out quite a bit of money. And then, of course, with the Illinois budget, they are also conservative with their budget. So other than that, that was about it. We set meeting dates for the rest of the year. That's about it.
Did they mention anything about was it a pool or a gym that they're leveling up out there?
No.
They didn't mention anything about that? Okay, because that was one of their big capital project. The last meeting I went was getting rid of the pool. Is it the pool?
That's Libertyville.
No. Up at Gage's.
Oh, I don't know.
There's a pool or a gym or something that is they're repurposing it up, all of it, and so that was a big capital project out there. No mention of that. Okay. No, since you said they're running on a deficit for 3 years because of their capital project and roads and stuff. So, any questions for Matt?
How do they anticipate budget?
That we didn't. She was really more concerned about the state.
Start
So
doing
she's
cold
her hands are tied, so.
calls. You know those calls you've been getting on your cell phone?
Oh, it's,
Oh,
Well, actually, is there a point then where they charge the member districts more to make that up?
I think we're seeing reasonable increases for them this coming year in the neighborhood of 3%. I think they're deficit spending over the next couple of years and hope to keep the rates growing at the rate they're growing. And then hopefully they'll be done with their major capital improvements, such as their roadways up there. I think that's along their line of thinking, and hopefully the state will come through with some additional funding. But they take it year to year like we do, and we're seeing our normal from them.
this is a 3%. Oh, the next discussion item is the 2017 maintenance vehicle proposal.
Yes, just to give you an overview, we put together a vehicle replacement plan. We like to plan for things so we can make sure we don't have all of our vehicles breaking down at once. So we've been replacing them just like you do at home. You don't want to have 3 cars at home and all of a sudden all 3 go out at the same time. So we put a plan together in 2013 to begin replacing them, or 2012 to begin replacing them in 2013. And we've been replacing a vehicle a year. At the time we have 7 vehicles. I believe we still do, and they ranged anywhere from 47,000 miles up to 160,000 miles. So this plan called for replacing a vehicle a year off the state program. The state has does a bid on different types of vehicles, and this year. So we're in the 5th year of our replacement plan, and we're actually taking a year off. Hopefully next year we'll able to take a year off, and then another year off after buy a vehicle in 2019, take a year off in 2020, and then replace our last vehicle in 2021. So this year we're looking to replace a Ford F-250 4x4 vehicle in the amount of $28,994. It would be purchased off the state contract from Landmark Ford. This is to provide a vehicle to replace a vehicle that has over 143,000 miles on it. We did get we have 2 quotes on a trade-in at Landmark for $2,200, and we got a quote from CarMax for $2,000. I did ask James to get one more quote before we make a recommendation to the board as to whether we're going to trade it in. This vehicle won't be available. Our goal is to get this approved at the next meeting and then place a purchase order. It would still be about 6 weeks is the lead time on this. So we'll still have time to either get a 3rd quote, which he's working on now, or determine if we want to go out to auction. Blue Book value is a little bit higher than $2,200. It's in the neighborhood of $3,000. So we may do what we did with our last vehicle, which is go out for auction and put an ad in the paper and have people submit sealed bids and place the minimum bid at $2,200, since we know that's what we're being offered, and see what we get. If we get it's not expensive to place a small ad in the paper, and then we post it on our website as well, make people aware that we have a vehicle available, and see if we can get a little bit more than money than $2,200 if we don't get a 3rd quote that's closer to value. So that's probably what we'll do. So we'll ask for action on the 26th meeting to approve this purchase of this vehicle, and it's built into the budget for 2017.
If we don't trade in the vehicle though to Landmark, won't that affect our purchase price?
No, this is exclusive of the trade-in.
Okay.
So it would be $2,200 less. We would show that as a rebate.
Okay.
Right?
The state provides the pricing.
Yeah.
You wanna-
State does a bid specification for, especially for 4x4, since many municipalities and government institutions use them for plowing, and you see them out from the village of Vernon Hills and the Park District. They all have 4x4 Silverado trucks. So they bid at a state level and get the lowest price from a dealer in the state, and they market that out to all the municipalities and governmental units. That's how we maintain our pricing without having to go out to bid.
Any questions? Discussions? The next is the GCA contract renewal proposal.
Okay. GCA is our cleaning company that does our nighttime custodial work. We have our daytime staff as our staff, and the nighttime staff is a third party, GCA. We've been working with them since 1999. We're extremely happy with how our buildings look and how they maintain our buildings. They've got a great staff and leadership team in place. They work extremely well with James Staples, our facilities manager. We did go out to bid last year, and this past year was the first year of our renewed contract. The contract does call for a CPI increase if we agree to that. What happens is if we don't, their staff has stagnant wages. We really want to keep and maintain the quality staff that they have. So we're proposing a 2.1% increase for the contract of 2017-18. This is the second year of our 3-year contract. It also has a series of 4 one-year renewals that we put in the contract. So we're tied in for 3 years with GCA. We negotiate the pricing each year, and then after that, it's year to year. If we're still happy with them, if we're not, we can go out to bid again after that 3-year period.
So this is our second year,
This
right?
is our second
And
year
year of the 3-year contract.
of the 3-year contract. So this would increase our contract from $617,257 to $630,214, an increase of just under $13,000, $12,957 per year. And that is put basically back into the wages. So there's no increase necessarily to the GCA corporation. They pass that along to their staff. They help us to ensure our buildings are clean, and we're very happy with their service and are asking for this approval on the 26th.
Any questions?
Do I recall this correctly, that we added a day? We
did
had
add
cut
a
back, and so how has that worked out?
It's
in
worked
terms
out
of
well.
billing?
I mean, I think I've never heard a complaint about the way our buildings look. I think we have some of the finest looking facilities. That's a credit due to Mr. Staples and his team. I've had vendors come through here and architects, and many people come through, and often I'm told that we have some of the cleanest buildings and best maintained buildings out there. So I think the extra day certainly has helped maintain the workload and balance it out, and we feel like we're seeing the rewards.
So it's worth the extra day and the cost to
Yes.
clean an extra, okay.
Yes.
Could you explain to the
Well,
rest of us?
we didn't add an extra day. We added an extra hour each day.
We added an extra
We
hour
added
to
an
their
extra
work.
hour. They were working 7-hour shifts and back to it. We were having the teachers do some of the wiping down of the desks and whiteboards, some of these tasks that we had pulled away from them when we were going through some difficult times financially, and putting the garbage out in the hallway. So we added an hour to the shift in order to make sure we were getting our buildings.
Increase of 5 hours in a week, almost.
Yeah.
A little over half.
We still have a week off in the summer. We maintain that 1 week off for the staff. That we used to have them year round, 52 weeks a year, but we've still maintained that one. So we're still seeing some savings.
Any questions?
They said that the increase is for the wages, correct? Do we get any type of confirmation that they do in fact go to wages? I'd hate for them to see, use that as an excuse
We can
To
certainly
increase.
ask for confirmation.
and then it not be passed along to the employees.
We can certainly get that in writing.
Any edits? No? The next one is the Joint Conference 2017 Delegate Assembly Resolution.
I didn't know if the board, anybody wanted to write a resolution for the delegate assembly. Every year we have our AAA conference and they do have resolutions and stuff. I don't believe we've submitted one in the past. If there was a interest or a need, be the time to throw one together. You'll probably sell a lot of resolutions at AAA all about get the state to pay the budget, But
Anybody have any resolution they would want to put in, discuss?
Well, I think you could ask your staff that too, since it goes to how schools are governed and regulations that are developed. So maybe you could do that and let us know as well.
Sure.
We also share with, just to let you know, we have a delegate advisory assembly through my organization, IASBO, and I've participated in that as well. But we do look at legislation as well, present through our professional.
And we do a superintendent's association here.
Okay. Is there anything related to contracts or bidding procedures that might fall into that category?
Contracts or what kind of procedures?
Contracts or bidding procedures?
Yeah, we actually, I was working on something regarding food service because you remember we had the issue a couple of years ago where we had $1,000 difference in our vendor. So we've been working trying to get the state to change that guideline so that you don't have to go with the lowest responsible bid, that there is some threshold like they do with transportation, where if you're happy with your current vendor and it's 1% difference, you wish to stay with that rather than go through that. So we have been working on legislation regarding that, trying to present to that. Things that make our lives a little easier and put a little less stress on the districts that aren't financial.
It costs us more than $1,000 to change vendors for food services, so.
Next item is food service renewal, which was previously discussed at the last meeting.
Yes, just to renew our Arbor contract for 2017-18. We're completing our second year with Arbor and have been very satisfied with their service this past year. We have a very good general manager, Mary Beth. I get many compliments from our staff that works with her on the job she does. We bid this out in 2015, and this is a series of, it's a 5-year contract with renewal each year. And our contract is written in such a way that it increases by CPI, food away from home. It's a little bit different index that is used. It's more reliant on the cost of food rather, because that is the major driver on this. So the proposed increase is 2.3%, which is based upon the CPI for food away from home from December 15 to December of 16. So we're asking for approval tonight to renew that contract.
And just for the public who might be listening, this increase would not affect the food prices that we would be paying. We've already discussed that, and those have been said. So those would not be going down to our, this is different from
Yes,
that.
Yes, we pay a per meal rate to Arbor
Yeah.
for breakfast, lunch, and snacks, full snacks, summer meals. So that's fixed in the contract, and then we fix our meal price as well each year to reflect our needs to fund the program.
Just to let everybody know that. Any questions? Once, twice, gone. Next is technology responsible use policy, which was previously discussed on the previous 2 meetings in May.
Couple of items for us real quick. It's gone through several hands reviewing this. It is this document actually kind of covers multiple documents. Some districts may have a couple of different sign-off forms. We've created this into one with one basic sign-off form. I had a couple of recommendations from some folks that made sense. On the first page, under receiving Chromebooks, item D, the district and its staff officers, teachers, aides, principals, technology director, superintendent, administrators, and it had board members, and those acting in their direction, retain the exclusive right to repossess. And I struck board members because the board members wouldn't be repossessing those back from anybody, so it overextended. And then there was one other area. Somebody asked a question, and it was a very good question. There's two statements under the network etiquette that seem to be conflicting with each other. And for the life of me, I cannot find my notes or remember why they're conflicting. So I'm going to check with our attorney, see if she can help. I know it's for good reason, but on one of these, we have here, recognize that email is not private. People who operate the system have access to the email messages relating to it or in support of illegal activities may be reported to the authorities. And then that was D, and then F is consider all communications information accessible via the networks to be private property. And I just need to verify, I believe that F, the consider all communications information accessible via the network to be private property. I got to check to see if we're talking about.
Are we missing the word not in that? In
I'm
F?
sorry?
Are we missing the word not in F? possibly?
I think that's what the case is, or somehow I was trying to reference some form of a copyright if you were working with some software or something. And I can't for the life of me find my notes, so I'll be talking to the attorney. More than likely, what I'll do is either add the word not or strike this from the form. We are sending out some communications to middle school parents next week for them. And what I want to do is insert a one page with a link to this, and then the parents can go online, watch the training video, read this material, sign off, send it in, so we can start collecting these forms early. But those were the last two corrections or questions that I'd received on this. And again, it is a combination of several documents together. We would also then include this somewhere in the student handbook as a second location, so they would have it for later reference. But I think we're in pretty good shape to go there. As you heard, the physical phones have been ordered in-house. Chromebooks are planning for deployment. This will go out to parents so they can sign off, and we'll start collecting those, and we'll be ready to go.
So do students still get physical handbooks?
I'm sorry?
Do students still get physical handbooks, hard copy anymore? They don't,
I think
right?
so.
Okay.
No.
A lot of paper.
Since this
The
is
Chromebooks, you
the
don't need them.
technology responsible use policy, this does not require board approval and it's an administrative procedure. I know since we have a couple of edits to make on it, could you send us all a copy of the final thing after you talk to the
Yes.
attorney so that we know,
Right.
I mean, just as a copy for us to know where it started going,
The
where we settled on.
I'll be happy to do that. The nice thing about that is it's not a policy. If for some reason we determined there was an issue we wanted to make a change or add, we can do that on the fly. Doesn't have to go through board readings, things of that sort. So if you were to see something, or an administrator were to see something, or a teacher say we need to make an adjustment, we can make that adjustment, notify parents, say there's been this adjustment, and then communicate that way. So I will try to email this tomorrow or the next day after it's confirmed. Thank you.
The next item of discussion is the enrollment update.
I gave you some information, just kind of showed you some trends on the enrollments that have occurred. What I was trying to share with you is multiple things within that document. Just the fluctuation you'll see in the week by week early in the fall, summer, how it changes and can change drastically. Also then show you what we were looking at the very end. I did have somebody ask me a question about my final enrollment number compared to Brad's final enrollment number on his budget document. We pulled those enrollments about 6 weeks apart. 6 weeks apart this time of year can have a significant difference in how many kids might be in there, depending on when we got information on withdrawals or with students moving in. I do think I have a slight error in mine. I'm double checking how I did my math. I include in my count the John Power students. That's roughly about 35 of them that come into our buildings, because I have to account for their physical space. but we don't budget for the teacher, but I have to account for the physical space for them to be in. Where Brad is not including those, but I may have had a double count of about 30 students for some of our students that are outplaced or special services. We count them in enrollment because if we ever needed to bring them back, we needed to make sure we have spaces, locations for those. But so that would show you roughly where we thought we were at that particular time. I'm also going to give you a document today, and I'm going to hand this to you, and I'm going to ask you don't believe it when I hand it to you.
That's very nice.
Yeah, because now this is, and what I will try to do is very shortly start sending, like I did last year, sort of weekly, here's where we think we're at. The document you're getting now is early projections for 2017, 2018. And the number is much lower than what we think we'll actually have. I'll walk you through how I did the math, and if you think you got any questions, ask me, or if you have a suggestion. What I did was take our current enrollment for grades K through 8. I subtracted out any students, any families that mailed in a letter said they know they're not coming back. So we subtract them out by grade, by building. Then I took any new students that have enrolled. If you remember, we opened our enrollment 6 weeks early. So we've had, right, this time last year, we didn't have people coming in to enroll yet. So we took whoever's been coming in and enroll. I added those into by grade, by classroom. So we've taken out who we know we leave, and I've added into who I know is coming back. I then migrated the grade levels up by 1. So what you see in first grade on here is our current kindergarten. What you see is third grade is our current second grade. They all matriculate up by 1 grade. This year's 8th grade falls off. And then I just assigned for kindergarten, the projection, the plan is for Aspen to have 75. That's 3 sections of 25. North to have 100. That's 4 sections of 25. And you kind of see the pattern there in the math. And so we anticipate about 450 students per grade level. So I put that in kindergarten. And then that gives me this number in which I'm working from right now, and it's 4267. I caution you, because that 4267 is low. We will get more students moving in between now and into mid to late September. And last year, I talked to Jim Sasiwa last year in September. They had like 25 students move in September, after September 1st. They had a large move in. Very hard to predict, depending on where they're coming from. Depends on sometimes when they get here and move in. So I will try to update this for you every week or every other week and let you know how it's fluctuated. Don't be surprised to see the number spike one week and then drop the next week significantly, because we may get an influx of requests for records from another school, and then we realize, oh, they've enrolled somewhere else, and we can remove those. We only remove them when we know for sure that we've had confirmation they're not coming, either from the parents telling us or a request from records, and then we kind of go from there. But this just kind of gives you a sense of what we're looking at this time. And at this time of year, we watch it very carefully, and it fluctuates. If you recall, we have contingency positions in the budget. Before mid-July, it would be nice to make the decisions on which classes are bubble classes that may need to have something an additional teacher added, because then it gives us time to do the schedule for that building when you add an additional teacher section. It changes that, but also get the teacher hired and have them prepared, ready for the school. So this is, when I hand this to you, I just put a big asterisk next to it. It's just where we're at right now, the best guess we have off of what we know. And we kind of can go from there. And so this is where we're going. The patterns are 3 sections per grade level at Aspen, Town Line, and Dual. 4 sections at North, 5 sections at South for the elementary buildings. And then we make our adjustments as we go through those. And I'll just keep updating. You can see the John Powers students to the side. That's roughly 35 students that come in for services. Gives an artificial bump. So when they go to Town Line for PE, or they go for art, sometimes they go for a math or a social studies, it will give an artificial bump into that class. They come with a professional with them. They usually have somebody with them coming into the class, but it does, if you have a large class already, it just makes that class even larger, constrains the space. So we're going to keep monitoring. We'll keep updating this for you, and don't be surprised to see if you see large fluctuations going up and down. I did get a call. We know that Cuneo's is going to be starting shortly. I did get a call from a developer. I'm supposed to meet with him this week. There's a building over here that we previously discussed that somebody was looking to purchase. they're looking at now turning that, tearing it down if purchased, and maybe going into townhomes, something of that sort. So I'm
No.
looking.
Will that require
Where is
approval
that?
from the village?
I'm sorry.
Will that require approval from the village?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find. I received the phone call from the developer to ask to meet with me, and then I want to hear what exactly is being planned, and then I've got a meeting trying to get with the village and find out.
That
what
in
they
the
know.
Vernon Hills side or Mundelein side?
Our side.
Where
It's
is it?
just over here behind the Sullivan Center.
Oh,
Office building, right over that way, not this way. That one has not
I know.
progressed
Off
whatsoever.
of Atrium is where you're talking
Right,
about.
yeah, yes, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't remember that. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Like that elder care facility, and there's some short office buildings across from the fire station.
Oh,
It's
okay,
right
yeah,
behind
yeah,
the
yeah.
Sullivan Center.
I'll send you I'll get a Google map for you, show you where it's
I
located.
know, now she
Yeah,
says that, I.
and once I
have
kind
an
of get the
idea.
details from them on what they're looking at, then I can give you. But
No.
people love Vernon Hills, which is wonderful, but we're
More
full right now.
traffic, yeah.
You know, the messages were full right now. So on the enrollment, off of the top of my head, to try to remind everybody kind of what some of the displacements were, I'm going back and looking through my notes, and I've asked Dr. Sarali to do the same thing so I can give you more updated what we did this year and what we think is going to happen next year. Remember that at Elementary South, we have music programs that are displaced into the stage or what was a kitchen. We have two art classrooms displaced out into portables, and then we have shared classrooms for ELL and special ed. So classrooms that normally would have their own space, you have 2 or 3 teachers sharing in that space. Over at Elementary South at Town Line, I have art in the fitness room because the art room's a classroom. We have conference rooms can't be used as conference rooms because they're being used as special ed rooms. The small special ed room that was upstairs near the library is also being used for enrichment. The stage is being used. I think it was for Hawthorn enrichment.
Enrichment.
Yeah, Lisa's going to jump in here and help my memory.
You know, just, it's, a lot of that information is on the FAQ document that's on the EMFP website. So it's the second question about what have we done already to address some of the overcrowding. And so those are listed out by building.
So we'll pull those up and verify, and then kind of show what do we think is going to happen. And then for middle school next year, I'll jump to middle school next year. We know we're going to the one-to-one personalized learning. We've talked about converting the computer labs. I gave you a quote on what the computer lab conversion is minor. I forget exactly, Brad. What is the level in which board approval is required for that? It's like
For construction, that's
yeah. So anything that's underneath that doesn't require board approval, and so you've seen what the costs are to convert that into a classroom. We want to wait a little bit after the one-to-one deployment to make sure that there aren't any glitches that we're just unaware of. And once that has been confirmed, we'll start to convert those rooms into 2 classrooms. That will give us some extra space within the building. Middle schools have the ability to absorb a little bit of increase easier than an elementary due to the way schedules work. They can assign students a little differently and spread them out a bit. The principals know roughly the time frame of when those 2 rooms would be converted and can use them, and then they would adjust their patterns and see what they have. But just to be safe, making sure that there isn't some glitch that we missed somewhere, that we didn't need to use those. Because we also do quite a bit of assessment early in the school year, and so we want to have those in case we needed to do that. But
Nick, can I interrupt you for 1 second? Any possible potential new residential development? My concern is, of course, discussing with the village prior to them really sinking their teeth into it, because it seems like once they get once they get excited about it, there's no turning back. I can't speak for anybody else. I can only speak for myself. I'm personally not interested in more residential units, regardless of the impact fees, because they can't possibly pay us enough in impact fees to build a new building or something that's going to actually make a difference. So any thought as to whether a board member will come with you to talk to the village, or whether we can kind of send a message on our behalf?
I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I think
No, it's okay.
actually for the next board meeting, we have a little section scheduled in here for the EFMP in kindergarten. The next board meeting, we could put on here and let the board discuss if there was some sort of a position paper they wanted to take to share with the village and say, as we're full and we are needing to make these investments, here's our stance on any potential new investment, even if it has potential tax increases for the community. Here are our concerns. Here's what we think. Because the impact fees generally will not cover the additional
Right.
cost. If we had space, it might help, but since you're full, the costs are triple what they
Right.
normally would be. So I think it would be appropriate to have that conversation at the next board meeting. By then I'll have more details. It's an initial call from the developer saying, I want to talk to you.
Right.
I do have a meeting this week with the mayor, in which Sonali is coming with me, and I'm hoping it will be part of that conversation as well about multiple things for the kindergarten center. And hopefully that will be something I can fold into the conversation. But I do think as the next meeting, a position paper might not be a bad idea. Say we're stressed, and anything additional, it's just causing more stress. And
Right.
if you're going to do impact fees, make them significant.
I mean, there's no way a developer would pay the amount of impact fees it would take to actually generate
Right.
physical classrooms.
Right.
Because as far as the community thinking that the middle schools can absorb more students right now, I mean, even if there's flexibility in scheduling, if we use that as the excuse for too many people coming into the middle schools, it's not going to work. I mean, it was already the reason that we could absorb dual language being expanded in the middle schools, right? We're getting back the computer labs now. Those can become classrooms. Well, then they can't also become classrooms for a new residential unit. It just, there's only so many bodies to be put in the building. And I personally don't see from my own experience at Middle North where there's space to put anybody.
They're maxed out. Is my statement, just to clarify, especially if anybody's listening, it's easier for a middle school or a high school to absorb enrollment increases, but we're at a point where we're maxed, and so it doesn't solve the problem.
Right.
In elementaries, when you get those increases, since the students are assigned by grade by class, that makes it a little more difficult. But you're correct in that we are maxed. We have an issue right now. Our future is a problem, but our issue is right now. And we need to make sure folks are clear on that issue. But I will make a note to myself to add for the next board meeting, if the board approves, I have a discussion on a position paper for the village and go from there.
Thank you.
In addition to the impact paper, we also need to make that face-to-face contact with the mayor or village president. And we also need to make sure that we're on this before the developer makes any type of political contributions. I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. So I think we just need to be on it and make sure.
May I suggest then, I have a meeting with the mayor coming up. It was before this issue came up. My hope was I could put it on there, but I don't know, Sonali, I don't want to speak for you, but possibly Sonali and one other board member, somebody volunteer and allow me to arrange to set a meeting specifically for developments in this particular development with the mayor or somebody at the village to discuss this issue specific to our concerns.
I would be happy to help.
Because right now we have a meeting scheduled for it's for a
Different issue,
different issue.
right? But I was hoping I
So-
could weave this in.
So we could
Yeah.
work on that and see how that first meeting goes and work it from there to see who we want to. And you and I can discuss and see if we want to bring this up, will we have enough time to bring up new developments too at the same time? Because I don't want to dilute the issue of already what is going on. Because we need, in that
Right.
situation, if we
Yeah.
bring too many topics at a discussion, I don't want to dilute out those topics completely. Where, you lose focus of what you set out the meeting for and go somewhere else. So you and I could talk about it and see what it is, and we could reach out to one of the board members and anybody who's available on that time to move with us.
But whoever's talking to the mayor as a board member, I think Nick is right that the board as a whole has to write up a resolution or come to an agreement as to what our position is. Just you or one other person talking in the village, you really can't speak for the board unless the board has come to some agreement. So
Right.
And
we need to have that conversations ourselves first. I agree with Nick there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
One of the things I wanted to, going back to enrollment, how is the portable working out at Aspen for the art?
South?
South, sorry.
South.
Not
Oh
Aspen.
my God, I got a portable at Aspen. I missed it, though.
No, sorry, that's South.
It worked well last year. I'm having conversations with Dr. Martin to see if we want to maintain the same plan of having art there or if there's something else. I want to investigate the use of the water in the, it was 50,000 if you remember, to pipe for water. And so we went with like you might see at an event where you pump it with your foot and you can get some water. So I want to investigate that with James Staples and see the sanitary purpose of that. And so Dr. Martin and I have a meeting to try to discuss what might be some options. It provided us the relief we needed, but come back and look and see what else. Is there a better way or another way? Art is a good location. Everybody goes to art. You can work out there. You can do those things. It's not a bad situation. Problem when you have a double wide, where you have two classrooms, you can't have music on one side and another class on the other. You really can't even have two music classes in there, but it's easier to have one double wide than two separate situations in there. So we're looking to see if it's going to maintain the same program or if we'll adjust that slightly. We might look at some adjustments and see what programs might work in how we do it.
And could you, at next meeting, when you give us the updated numbers as they come available, could you tell us, I mean, for Aspen and for elementary, as you said, it's easier to say, we need 3 more classrooms because we have a bubble class and, so we are going to take the art class away or the health class away. And you did say that the middle school, I mean, they can absorb, but there's still a capacity. I mean, we don't want 30 kids in a math classroom because, they have to absorb them.
Right,
Because
right.
ultimately, it still is a scheduling thing. I mean, the kids have to be split into 8 hours of a day and go through all their curriculum in fact. So could you get it back from Mr. Natal and Mr. Collins to what are the adjustments they're making? What is it in the class sizes? Because there is an adjustment they're making, and I don't want the community to think that because they can absorb it, that means they don't need the thing. We know it. I mean, I didn't have kids in Middle South, but I can tell you that Middle North lunch used to be going on, and they would be doing PE on the stage when it's winter time. So, there are adjustments that are going to be made just because they are making those adjustments. I don't want the community feel that there is not an adjustment in far as class sizes and stuff that is also being made at the same time.
Well, I think, yes, I will get that for you. If you just do some quick look at Middle School North, 8th grade next year is 219 students, 230 for the incoming 6th. That's a significant jump. And when you get that for every grade, because the incoming grades after that are going to be in that 220 to 230 range. And if you look at South, 7th grade is 232, and their incoming 6 is 267. And the 267 is still 20 more than the 8th grade projected for next year. So we are seeing the larger classes are now reaching the middle school, and getting in there. So I'll ask them. They've just done a really nice, and all the buildings have just done a really nice job in trying to solve this problem. But it makes it invisible in some ways because it's when we say absorb, they're adjusting schedules, class sizes are up, you're having more. So I'll get some answers for you on kind of what they're planning on.
And I'm just going to back up like one section before. Can you let us know what Dr. Martin's recommendations are for what's going to go out in the trailers?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Educational facility master plan.
Yes.
Okay, on the educational facilities master plan, you have in your file or in your folder, we did include the options A and options B for you that were presented at the last time. Also, in that for your reference are sample questions. Link strategies also are in there, some sample questions for the survey. When I was working with them, and one of the reasons it was taking me a little time with this, we're trying to ask certain questions about why somebody may or may not have supported the particular referendum question, or they may or may not have liked a certain component. And Link took those ideas and then reworded them. It's better asking people to rank things as opposed to what did you like or what didn't you like type of way. So on here, we have 15 questions. We have some open-ended pieces. where folks will be able to share opinions that we can calculate in. We also have some information about, did you vote and were you aware? One of the questions I'd like to find from some of these folks, if you voted, were you aware before you voted that there was this question on the ballot, or when you showed up, you didn't know? And because if somebody votes yes or votes no, but they're informed, it's a better decision than if somebody doesn't know and then they just aren't sure what to do. So we're trying to get a read of percentage of folks that were aware or not on here, and then asking about certain aspects of the facilities master plan that was on for the referendum, and asking them to give us some insight on what they thought. So I wanted to include this in here as well for you to do a review. And then what I'd like to do is to put this up in June and leave it for a 6-7 week period, advertise it through our media, get the village to send it out through their media, also get the Park District to send it out through their media. Now, I would also suggest, I think that a survey such as this will give us some information. And we may get some folks that didn't vote or weren't unaware, and they may take it, and that's fine, but we'll get some information. But I would also suggest that in combination with this, I think that the board should consider bagels with the board type of situation where I have 2 board members, we advertise the location, and the topic is we invite you to come in and share with us what your thoughts were on the referendum question, aspects of it, things you liked, things you didn't like, just to have that conversation. And if the board is open to that, I'd like to have Link Strategies also come in and train the board on how to have one of those, because you're not in a defense or a sway, you're just trying to listen. It's sort of a listening tour. Tell me what you thought. Ask the right types of questions to gain some insight from folks. A combination of that, and of course you record this information. I would try to make myself or one of my administrators available to record what is being shared for folks, and then you combine that with the survey, and you might get yourself a better picture of what the community is thinking about certain aspects of it. So I think to do this is okay, but I think you need to do both to get a better quality piece of information to help understand what might have been some areas of concern or some thoughts. And so these are some questions for review. And you haven't had a chance to read them, so we'll give you a chance to read through those. But so those were the maps, the EFMP maps, and then the questions that I wanted to make sure were in your hand. With the EFMP, it's, remember we have an educational facilities master plan. It is a 10-year plan. So just a quick review: the A and B options are 10-year plans, and in there is the Sullivan Center kindergarten center, in which you're working to progress with. The plan committee meets tomorrow for the first time to sit down and just kind of get the general, organizational meeting. How are we going to run this type of meeting? What are we looking at, and what are our targets and goals, and how will we progress through that piece? About every 2 weeks, they'll be meeting to go through this process. So there are 2 questions that come about. One would be some guideline tonight from the board, if there are anything specific that the board would want to make sure that the plan team is aware of to consider, much like you did for the core team. Like one of the guidelines would be $12 million. You have $12 million, and where can you go? But if there was something else that you thought was important, and the information will be coming back to the board on a regular basis, so more feedback can be given. We'll try to make more of a 2-way conversation in this planning process. So one of the questions is, are there guidelines from the board on what they want to make sure that plan team is aware of as some guidelines as they're working through that? The other piece is, as we're looking at the EFMP, and for the new board members, you have copies. I'm sure you've seen them because you were all pretty active in keeping up with the process. The board needs to start having a conversation about, do you want to put a question out there? And if you think you might want to put another question out there in March, the sooner you make that decision, the longer I have with my team and for you to run at that communication piece to the community. And so I'm going to throw a date out just as a conversational piece. Again, I would like the board to have a discussion and see what you think. But if our first board meeting is September 11th, our first meeting in September is September 11th, it would be nice to know if you had made a decision on what question you wanted to put out at that time, because that gives us plenty of time to start running. The reason I ask if you do it in September, the first meeting in September, I can backwards plan the next board meetings on what discussions need to occur, what information do you need to have, and what would you want to discuss at every board meeting up until that point. One of the reasons I'm suggesting September 11th is when we get into the fall season at school, when we get into that November, December, we run into so many holidays. It is very disruptive in the communication process at times. If we know earlier in the fall what you think the question will be, it's helpful. If we wait into that November, December time, it's difficult sometimes to get the board meetings aligned, so you don't have to add other board meetings, and that gets lost in the communication with what people are planning through what they might be planning with family and other things. And it gets put on the back burner in some regard, I'm afraid. So I'm just suggesting the conversation. What would you like to make sure the plan team knows about kindergarten, and when do you want to make a decision on if you want to put a question out? And my recommendation would make that decision in September, if at all possible. So I just throw those two out as discussion questions. And
I sort of think there's a separate discussion that needs to happen first of if, let's say, we do want to put another referendum question out, is the April ballot even the best one to go on? I think there's a certain hit we would take by the fact that there's no other election going on at the time. Whereas November of 18, which will be here before you know it,
yeah,
there's a lot of stuff on the ballot that will probably draw voters out. Whether you think that's an advantage or disadvantage remains to be seen, but I think it's before we even work our way backwards from the September 11th meeting, it may be worth having a discussion of if we were to go to referendum, which ballot would we even want it on?
and I think that's the conversation I'm asking the board to have by September 11th to make a decision.
Okay.
So
Sorry, I
think-
thought you were just saying like decide what the referendum question would be by September 11th, and
do
then
you even want to put a question out by
Okay.
September, to make that decision by September 11th? And through that period, I think you bring about an excellent point. The April or November, which is your best target to get the most voters? What do you think you're going to be successful with? So, but if you're thinking April, if that turned out to be,
right shorter
then
window.
the sooner you make that decision, better. But I was thinking between now and that September 11th, that is the discussion of the board. Do you want a question? If you do, when do you want the question?
Okay.
And then if you decide you do want the question, and you know when, then what is the question? So
Okay.
first is, do you want one? What would you want it to be? But when would you want it to be? And then what would you want it to be? So
Okay.
I think we're on the same page. I may not have articulated.
Okay. I might not understood it well.
Yeah, and I guess it just depends too, like, when we get the feedback from the community and, kind of this,
Right.
I mean, if we can't really get all the data together, we might not be able to make the decision by that September 11th of if we would want to put a question or not. So,
Right. Just for my thought is that the information coming back from the community might inform you on what the question might look like that you would be putting out. Is that going to adjust a potential question? So let's say it came back overwhelmingly supportive STEM centers. And you say, oh, we weren't think we would do that because we thought the numbers, the cost was too much, but there's so much support for that, we think we might have to rethink that. That would inform you what your question might look like, but it may not fully inform you on what the question is. So part of this is for the board to have conversations amongst yourself on where do you stand with, what are your thoughts are on our need. We currently are full and we project growth. So how would we want to solve that? I do agree in that process, I'd be collecting the information. And once we got the survey data, and if you do the bagels with board members piece, combine those two, that can help.
and we need all that info, I
Yeah.
think, before we can make really any decisions.
That would inform you on your final,
Before
I
go.
think. But I don't know if that would inform you on, would you go with a question?
More of a how you would go if you go.
Yeah.
Right.
So it is two, I think it's two. It's how, what does the question look like? And the first question is, do we think we need to go out and ask again? Do we have a need that we have to somehow resolve? And if that's the case, if there's confirmation we have a need, then the how information comes back. But if I'm afraid if we don't start some of those conversations, that we wait until I get that information back, it will delay some of those conversations. That will help inform you on your final decision, but some of the conversations might be, where do you stand as a board on, we're full, and we do know we have to solve a problem, and kind of go from there. That makes sense?
Yeah, can I ask a real quick question about when you mentioned that you would ask the village and the park district to also share this on their media?
I will be. I have. I
Right.
would be. Yes.
But since the majority of the voters come from, I don't even want to call them senior citizens, but certainly an empty nester senior citizen community who are probably less likely to be using social media than other age groups. I'm assuming when you say media, you're meaning like electronic forms of media.
We do a mailer as well.
You
I
would do a
apologize.
mailer?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not mention that. But the idea is that we would send out a mailer card
Okay.
to let them know how to take
Right.
the
Okay.
survey.
Then that answers my next question, which is, can we look at precincts that have those demographics and at least get them out there? Okay.
So we would do a
Thanks.
mailer card and says we're trying to get a survey to.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I did not mention that.
If you're going to send a mailer card, I mean, and then in the spirit of being very pragmatic and, being cost, you don't want to be sending mailers out 50 different times, one for a survey, one for, meeting with a board member or something. We need to have the dates of the meet with the coffee with the board member or something. We need to have them all out at the same time so we can send them out. So that has to be planned. We don't have to put in the names of the board members in there. We definitely need to have the dates and the location so it can all go on one mailer.
Yes,
So we're not spending multiple postings at the same time, because that is not cost effective at all.
Then hopefully by the end of next week, everybody look at Wendy because it really is going to fall on her. As much as I say, I will try to get this. Wendy and I will work that maybe by the end of next week we can have locations and suggested dates to you. Email it to you. You think that looks good? You could send in this. I can sign up for this date and this date, and at that time I can also work with Link Strategies for sort of protocols and training for that. And then we could try to get it all onto the mailer and send it out. The survey might go out before the mailer does go out to folks, and then we'll send the mailer second and get people to it. But I think that's an excellent idea. We can put that and save it on. One side would be survey, second side could be bagels with Lord or whatever you want to call it.
Because
I
otherwise,
just sometimes, I think the theory of having like bagels with the board is great or whatever. But I mean, when all the stuff for the referendum was going and you had this stuff, I mean, the attendance just isn't there. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's really worthwhile. I mean, theoretically, yes,
but how would you get it then? I
I
mean,
don't know.
I think we have to turn over every stone, and if we show up and they don't, so be it. Then
otherwise,
then I've given up an
otherwise
hour
there's
of my
no
life
point
I'll
of
never
the
get
survey
back.
then. You won't get the information. You can't put out a question. I mean, it's a catch. We'll do what all we can, and
Right. I think
just
we have
hope
to make
people will
ourselves
come back.
available, and if
It's free labor.
I do think it shows. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you, Wes?
no,
It's
we're
free
good.
labor. We're
Yeah.
free labor.
I do think it shows a level of transparency.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's a different forum for it. If there's a better way. I mean, I don't have one, so I don't have a better suggestion. But I don't. I mean, I don't know if we could maybe come up with something different. I don't.
Well, we can brainstorm. I mean,
If we can tie
That's
it
kind of
to.
what I
Thinking beer might be better than bagels. but-
I was gonna say that, and then I decided, we have a no alcohol at the school district policy.
Oh, okay.
We
I guess that's not
possibly
gonna work.
can
Well, it doesn't have to be at the school.
We possibly can tie it to some other event that may be occurring within the community
Yeah.
very close. So the library will make themselves available. So if there was something that,
We could set up a booth at summer celebration.
So, it's just
Next to
something
the ID check.
Right.
but I agree.
I mean, I was at
In the beer
two of
tent.
them. I mean, they were just
it was disappointing to not have as many.
yeah, and I don't. Yeah, maybe we take a couple weeks and see if anybody can come up with an idea of
Right, yeah.
a different forum.
We
for
have
it.
times. We'll work out
Yeah.
a calendar, but if somebody comes up with some other thought, it's just the combination of the two, the face to face and I think might be helpful. And we'll, if there's another potential.
And when we went to the senior center, they did show up.
Oh, yeah. yeah
I mean,
they did.
there's other events that they don't, but I mean,
But if you don't do it at the senior center, I don't think you're going to be seeing any of those people.
no, I
Yeah.
agree.
So
We could always reach out to them. I mean, we're gonna have to reach out to everybody.
right.
But to get you the most accurate, in speaking to folks, an exit interview is your best way to get the information right then. And I just wasn't even thinking of that at that point. And there's a cost to that, I think. That comes. So after that fact, a survey and some sort of personal meeting is your next best way to kind of get information you can put together. And so I would need you to review these and give me some suggestions that I can work with Link to get out. We'll work on the dates. A 5-6 week period for a survey to be open is rather long, but I think the longer we leave it, the more we'll get for folks that may be on vacation or somewhere. And we would do a mailer. I like the idea of the combination mailer. Two-sided card would be excellent. So we'll see what we can do. So with that, then also as we're starting to do the
Guidelines.
meeting, yeah, what are some of the things, and this can be refined as we go, but what are some of the things that we want to provide to the team that's going to start working on the plan? We meet tomorrow. It is an organizational piece, how, and Jason Lemke is organizing those agendas and working that.
Before we jump to that, I think the option B is not the plan that was on the ballot or that was approved by the board.
It's not, because the STEM centers aren't attached.
This, because it has the STEM centers that are detached.
This was the original option
building.
B before we
Get a
changed
modified
it.
B.
Well, I'll have to go back and look.
I don't think we ever made made an architectural plan of that. Eventually, when we did it.
Yeah, we should have.
Yeah, this was what we had at me, but I don't think we came back and corrected the.
Yeah, we do have it because we provided
Yeah.
for the referendum a copy of what
Right.
was approved. So here I can
He is
send it down.
Okay. Yeah.
And who do we have on the
Let
kindergarten?
me give this back to him so we don't lose it. It's the Education Facilities Master Plan. We'll find it.
We're starting tomorrow, right?
Right. Okay, so kindergarten.
Yeah, so I'll get that corrected and we'll email a version out to everybody. So on the kindergarten, kind of guidelines that you would want.
Who do you have on the team?
Let's see, I can't find that. I have teachers. I have some teachers. I asked the Park District to provide somebody, but I asked them to provide somebody that's familiar with their preschool program in classrooms that were just built. So when you design a classroom, their classrooms are 1,000 square feet. So when you design them, there's this ooh-ah factor. Wow, it's great. Once you live with it for a while, there's something you're going to find that you wish you would have changed. Like they have these wonderful architectural windows. They may come back later and say, "What brings the light?" But I can't control the window in any way. I can't shut. So I've asked them to have somebody that is intimately involved with the building and knows how that operates. So we have somebody from the Park District. We have a teacher from each elementary, except for dual language. So we have 4 teachers. Dr. Sarali, Brad, myself, Abe, and Brad. Abe Singh will be part of that as we go through there. Jason Lemke's on there. The construction manager, when they're finally selected and approved, would be part of that also as we go through. About 14, 15 people at this point. And then we'll go through that. Excuse me.
Wes is part of it from us.
Yeah, a board member. I can email out after tomorrow. Okay, yeah, I'll email out
I don't need names.
names, but there, Jason has suggested 10, 12, and I said I needed about 15. One is sometimes somebody can't make it for whatever reason, but 15 gave me enough representatives of the folks that might be needing to be involved in that.
So I don't have a super specific guideline. I think my guideline, as much as it can be done while still meeting the code requirements of kindergarten students, I would try to make the space as flexible as possible. Hawthorn has a long-standing tradition of making major changes every, 10 years or so. So when they decide to make use of this building in a different way 15, 20 years down the road, I would like it to ideally have that flexibility should we find that the kindergarten center idea isn't our best use of space.
Okay.
And I say we, as in I'm not going to be on the board at that point in a dozen years, but yeah.
Never
Is
say
the
never.
decision prefab or regular construction? Does that
I
come
have
into? It seems like with our set cost, that comes into what do we give up if we go one way or the other.
I have in the interviews with the construction managers and with working with the architects, I've already informed them that the board would like this prefabricated option considered. So if you only have $12 million and I can get you 30,000 square feet and that's not enough, you can't do the project. But if I can get you $12 million, I can get you 40,000 square feet with certain components that are prefabricated, and it has no change on the quality or the operation of the building. I've told them we want to have a look at that as potential. In talking to vendors that provide that last year, anywhere from 10 to 20% savings on compared to like a stick and brick building. A brand new prefabricated might save you 10 to 20% on the same cost. So I took the liberty to say we would want to have that as part of our work. Because I don't know, I think what will happen is it will give you options. If you decide to do these many classrooms in this way, the idea you could add extra square footage and still stay within or add amenities that you think are needed. So I have included that.
One of the things I would, from my point, would be is, the same thing as Robin said, was make the space flexible, but also design the building in such a manner that if later on somebody gives us the land which is next to it or whatever reason, you can add onto a building, like, a newer construction onto a building, not the flexibility of the existing building, but also an addition onto a building can be done easily with the access points and the corridors and whatever else is needed.
Okay.
So that, like if the village decides to give us all of their land, we'll take it and
Right.
figure out how to build. But, you have to be able to build onto an addition.
Right.
Well, and along those lines, it might not be cost efficient, but also maybe to add on above, like
Right.
building up.
So in your question, we're looking at building the building, that we should pre-plan a portion or a section that it could have a second story.
Yes.
Okay, because if you don't, it's more expensive, right? Okay, thank you, I'll make sure I do that.
Kindergartens, they all have to be on the first floor, right?
Yeah.
That might not.
Right.
be
Yeah, but you're,
But if you put in the
So the
structure to
initial
support a
construction-
second story, then
you could put your administrative offices
I
up,
say.
music or art can be up, because it's not a permanent classroom space. So it's an option.
But
I
that
will-
would be
yes.
a cost benefit thing, right? Because that's why we can't build it on
Right.
south and stuff.
So
That's what they said.
let's say the building comes in at $11 million and we say it gives us everything you wanted, but for 500,000 more, you could make these 4 classrooms structured in a way that you could add 4 classrooms on top. Then that would be an option the board may want to consider for the future boards to see. I understand that.
Or down below.
Yeah, you're right. I'm in for basements.
oh my God, excavating a basement after the fact is
I was gonna say,
outrageous.
yeah.
Also, I know we talked about a class size of 25, but ideally, especially for kindergarten,
Should be
we
lower.
should try to have enough space so we can get some smaller class sizes,
Mhm.
much
Agree.
smaller than 25.
Like 20-ish.
You want
What did you have in mind when you said
more
much smaller?
classes, more
Well-
but smaller classes?
What's that?
Are you-
No,
isn't
I mean, the
trading off-
square footage should be big enough to promote a good learning environment, obviously, but to the extent that we can add additional classes so that we don't have to have 25 or even 23 in a classroom, we should have more classes. Like, it's designed for or projected for 18.
Mhm.
Okay, well, maybe if we can put in 20 for the same amount of money and work in the space.
So put in as many classrooms as possible on that
Thank you.
land.
Now, and one of
Without
these,
making them too cramped.
Yeah, but that's what, like, not compromise on the size of it, because, we can put 20 students in 700 square foot, but not compromise on that, not go with that as a build model, go with because that square footage changes, because when you're putting
But I don't want to
20
give up the lunchroom for classrooms.
No, that's what the thing is.
so here's some thoughts as you share this. As many classrooms as possible that you could reasonably fit within your budget. They're right now scheduled at 1,200 square feet, including a bathroom in the kindergarten rooms, they have a bathroom. So there, hallelujah. You need those. The square footage of the rooms at the Sullivan Center that they built were 1,000 square feet. And some of our teachers have classrooms of 750 to 850. So anything, you get to 950, they got 100 more square feet. If it's planned appropriately, where if you go into Aspen and you look at their classroom space, they're bigger classrooms, but they have that sink
Right.
and right there, and it breaks the room into 2 sort of separate rooms. So the actual instructional space is a smaller square than their 950 square feet. So part of the challenge or part of the question would be, let's say you have 1,200 square feet per classroom, and you pull 100 square feet out of each one. And if you had 18 classrooms, you just had 1,800 square feet that you could assign in some way if needed. Those types of things I think the team will go through and value which is the best to go. Because if you could add 20 classrooms, if you have 22 classrooms, but you made them 800 square feet, but they only had 20 kids because you had 20 classrooms instead of 18, there will be sort of that discussion with the plan team. But right now they're scheduled at 1,200, which is a really good size for kindergarten because of the amount of manipulatives and spaces that they need. So you really wouldn't want to decrease that unless you were in a pinch, if at all possible. There does come that time where 100 square feet off each gives you an extra classroom. Is that more valuable in one location than 100? So those would be the types of questions we have. But right now I've jotted down to get as many classrooms as possible, and can that reduce the class size ratio, if at all possible?
Can just a curiosity question, can 2 classrooms share 1 bathroom?
Yes,
They do now in
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have as many classrooms as possible, and to potentially analyze, can you reduce the class sizes from the 25? Design the building in a manner that additions up and out could be accommodated for if possible. Make sure there is a discussion on the prefab is part of the work. Put it out front early. And make the spaces as flexible as possible. So the future, if the building was used in a different way, we're not talking about major ripping out of everything and changing stuff. So
And don't be afraid of moving the wetlands. It's not as big a issue as had been projected before, or mentioned before. It's really not.
we do have some information from Walt. What is it? Walt Hamilton?
Walt
Yeah,
Hamilton.
on some of that. They're providing us that service. So I'll have some information to share in a week or two that kind of where we're at and what the cost will be. We think it's going to be very potential.
I'm sure the teachers will bring this up, but on the off chance they don't, I feel like I have to say that we cannot forget dedicated space for some smaller group instruction. We cannot be having people sit out in the hallway again like they are at a lot of our schools because we've run out of
Dedicated small
dedicated
room.
space. I mean, dedicated little offices for social work and speech, and I don't know how anybody's supposed to get their reading minutes on their IEP when they're out in a hallway with commotion and kindergartners.
Or
and
even
so
when they have to be tested or accessed, or
Anything.
when
It
they
just-
need their one-to-one.
we're really hurting for that in a lot of our buildings. So
A lot of times this particular process will start with a wish list. All right, and you usually look at the teachers. Tell us what you really want to have in this. And somewhere it turns out to be, that's a $15 million building, we got 12, and then you rearrange. But we'll start with that, think big. What are all the things you think you want to make sure are here? And then kind of go through and look at that. But I will make sure that's included, that we want to make sure there's an appropriate pull-out space for small group instruction and
Right.
small one-on-one, 2-to-1 working.
Reminder
like-
that more classrooms equals more teachers.
Right.
So we got to think about funding for that as well.
Ongoing.
Going.
We have enough space for sufficient outdoor facility, play areas, fields?
Right now,
at the
we
kindergarten?
believe so, but we will make sure. I'm working with the, excuse me, I'm writing that down. I'm working with the village, trying to determine the preferred traffic pattern. And once I get a confirmation on what the preferred traffic pattern is, that then really informs the design. Are you talking about a square donut? Are you talking about the rectangle? And that has implications then on the wetlands. But I would say, if you were to build a rectangle from the Sullivan Center towards the library, and the wetlands were left, we would still reclaim that because you would use that for playground area, green space. I think the wetlands will go no matter what. But there's conversations about traffic patterns on either side of the building, and I need to get the confirmation of what they prefer, because that significantly changes the design.
are we any closer to having an answer as to whether there's any access that will be built to the library so that we don't have to build a library within this space, or
Well, right now, there isn't a plan to build a library. It'll be when you build this, it's going to be digital. I mean, it's wireless. We're that close to the library. We've had conversations. They'll be providing books coming over like they do
Okay.
now, or we'll go to there. We have shared with the library board several variations of having go in what I call a rectangle towards the library to connect, or very
Okay.
close to connecting. And it hasn't been a definite no. We're waiting to get some information, but I have shared with them, I don't have 3 months to find out.
Right.
I have a couple weeks, but we are trying to go in that direction and then provide that.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Please review the questions, and then the sooner you can send me some suggestions, the faster I can work with link strategies.
This concludes our committee of the whole. Does anybody need a break, want a break of a couple of minutes?
No, but on the committee reports, I didn't know if you wanted an update from that Hawthorn Student Assistance Program
Sure.
Committee I sat on, or if you want that on another agenda, because we didn't put it on the agenda.
No, it can be a committee report.
Okay. Yeah, so this past year, sat on the Student Assistance Program Committee, led by Megan Goldman. Students from every building participated, as did all the social workers and all the principals, myself, a couple other parents. So the last meeting we had was a few weeks ago, and the students have brought back some consistent feedback throughout the year about, I think the number one, talk about a wish list item would be an extended lunch period. Students said that pretty much at all grade levels. It wasn't just the middle schoolers, even though they're the ones that really have an even shorter one because they have to clean their own tables. But that was a big issue. Yes,
Can I hop in? I'm sorry. I've asked the middle schools to add 5 minutes into.
I did see that. I just didn't know if it was public information. so I didn't
I'm
see
sorry.
that.
I have asked them, yes.
As long as you spill the beans, I don't
Yeah,
care.
right. No, well, because I pop into those meetings, and I've consistently heard that now
Yeah.
for like 3 meetings. So I did just call the principals and say, we really need to add 5. Let's see how that helps the situation. So I,
Probably will help because they spend about 5 cleaning up, so that should get them at least back to what they're used to. And it was interesting because, of course, a lot of the students that sit on these committees are the kids that really have shown exemplary leadership abilities and stuff like that, but they were all just as bothered by some of the sort of trouble. I don't even know if I call it trouble. It's a lot of it, I think, is just kids being kids, but the issues with the middle schoolers going to Starbucks after school and library after school, and the some of the disruptions that have occurred because of it, and working with the community and its business owners and stuff like that to sort of get a better partnership going as to how we manage those things. I think like students are a vital part of their business, but at the same time, it can be disruptive in other ways. So that, and making better use of Officer Parrott's time after school. So a lot of feedback about that, and a lot of feedback about misuse of technology throughout the day at many grade levels, younger than people would think, of students taking phones, Apple Watches, even kids at the elementary level taking the phones into the bathrooms and using them there. And, a lot of concern over that. And I think we'll have to really keep that in mind moving forward to this one-to-one technology. I think that we have good plans in place, but of course, that's going to be a learning curve. So I think that if we can continue to employ some of the students to bring back that realistic, honest feedback, I think that would be kind of an amazing resource that way. And happy to sit on that committee again going forward. If somebody else wants to turn, it's a great one. I mean, it meets 3 times a year, so that's pretty simple, but it's really just sort of interesting to work with these kids and hear their perspectives, and especially from the ground level at every building, because of course, when we hear our own kids' perspectives, it's just from one place. So really interesting.
and just to touch on that, you had mentioned some of the issues for the library that after school. I've talked to Leslie. We're looking at doing a series when school starts up, sort of a did you know, for just the health benefits of, and the amount of calories are in some of these drinks at Starbucks. So just to try to inform, I was talking to a parent that was there and said he had concern over calorie count, types of quality drinks, and he was sharing that he just isn't sure parents are fully aware. It's nice the kids can go and sit down and have a coffee with each other, but people aren't aware of what really was in there. So we're looking at doing a little series at the beginning of the year, did you know? and then some health things about some of those drinks and stuff. And target mainly at the middle school families mostly, but we have a large number of students that go to these areas. Did you know one of these coffees equals so many calories? So just kind of share some of that a little bit. Maybe to at least start the conversation at home about.
Well,
Plus,
that
the
and
parents might not even know they're always at that 7-Eleven drinking 5-hour energy drinks, which is, they should not be. But I don't think parents,
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Yeah.
but they're out there.
So we're trying to look at that and.
I mean, along those lines too, when you're when we communicate with the parents, I think the misuse of the library as a babysitter after school is a problem. I'm there myself 2 days a week after school. It is a zoo. It might as well be a cafeteria. Nobody there is doing work. So if people are telling their kids to go there after school thinking they're going to get their homework done, I promise you there's like 4 kids getting their homework done and there's like 44 doing nothing other than socializing. And I just think it's I understand why parents feel like it's a safe place for their kids to hang out after school, but that's not what it's there for. And the library has now dedicated somebody whose sole job it is during those hours to supervise the middle school students. And I feel like that's kind of a waste of time.
And I did reach out to the library, ask them to let us know if they have any at this point. But the director didn't have any information for me, but he said he would monitor that beginning of the year with his staff. Because if there's something we can do to help. That was another thing that's consistently been heard in this group, that it's nice, but it's just a big.
But maybe this is about educating the parents during the curriculum night or open night and telling them that, if you let your kids go to the library, please be aware. I mean, I don't think they even, because the kids are not telling them.
There has to be a level of decorum. I mean, it's just.
So
we're
just
reaching-
educating the parents along with the health benefits and all the other things.
And the library's trying to be a good partner and neighbor, and
And they
have the kids
are.
there. They
I
do a
mean,
great job. but
They've
we-
actually done a great job, and I've never seen anybody there that doesn't have a smile on their face about it.
Yeah.
But I sit there and I kind of feel bad that they're having to dedicate somebody who just walks the booths at the library, to kind of monitoring the behavior.
Okay. Anybody want a break?
No thanks.
Okay, so
Two
we'll go into the
actions.
business meeting. Sorry?
We have 2 actions to get.
Let's get through it. Okay. The first action item is a consent agenda of the board minutes of.
Excuse me, you have to do a public comment for the
Oh,
business.
public, sorry. Anybody for a public comment? Anybody wishes to public comment? Going 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry.
People are lining up.
First action item is the consent agenda from board minutes of May 22nd, 17, closed session minutes of May 22nd, the personnel report, which is resignation of Karen Brennan, art teacher from Elementary South, Louisa Carol Jacks, 5th grade teacher from dual language, Becky Delenko, 3rd grade teacher at Elementary North, and leave of absence for Jamie Khan, who's assistant principal at Middle School South. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. The next action item is the food service renewal for Arbor Management. Do I have a motion?
I recommend that the Board of Education approve the 1-year food service renewal contract with Arbor Management as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion by Julie, seconded by Robin. Can I please have a roll call vote?
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jason Tron,
Aye.
Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel,
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. That's it. The President's report. In your packet, there has been, Nick had forwarded a town hall meeting by Carol Sante, which is on Tuesday, June 20th at Buffalo Grove, I think Ivy School at 6:30. It is regarding SB 1. If you can attend, please do. If you do attend, I don't know how many of us can make it because it's summer, but if you do attend, let the others know, or give us, give us a synopsis of what was kind of talked about it.
I'm gonna try.
I mean, I know
yeah,
it's
no,
summer, it's hard, so if you do, just let the others know what you heard. Because it's good to share information. That's it. As I had mentioned, it's summer. If you have plans, please let Nick or me know so that we have a quorum for board meetings.
I'm missing the 26th of this month.
You'll email Sonali or myself your opinion on a position paper for the village in some way.
Okay,
So we could read that and say, here's what your position is.
will do.
And on this,
Super-
yes. Ralph Materi, Executive Director for Center of Tax and Budget Accountability. Very interesting person to go listen to. So and Brad and I've seen him several times. He's a good reason to go if he's speaking. He heard what his thoughts are. He really seems to have a good handle on issues.
He's probably the most knowledgeable person in the state about school finance, and he has a lot of important ideas to share. Spoke in my first year of the program 10 years ago, and he's still spouting the same thing, and it still makes sense. So I recommend.
We can just get somebody in Springfield to hear that.
Yeah.
Real quick, just so you know, that since we're on summer break, wanted just to highlight some of our summer programs. We have Summer Scholars, and that's run by Dr. James Tomei. He's the coordinator, part of his contract. And that is for an invitation for students that are needing a little extra help, coming in and get some extra help through the summer. Program is limited to students who completed kindergarten, first, and second grade last year. So I'm going to give a little extra boost and help out. Our HEI, Hawthorn Enrichment Institute, that is run by Mr. Collins, and that is designed to get students excited about returning to school in August. A sample of classes have been offered, includes kindergarten readiness, discovering the world of dinosaurs, mastering the math, monsters, exploring fury, feathery, scaly, friend, and more. HEI is held at Town Line Elementary Monday through Friday, 8 to 11:55. 2 sessions are offered, July 5th through the 21st, July 24th through August 4th. This one is not by invitation. People sign up for it. But we've changed how we do our summer programming. We have over 100 more students now signed up for this. What we're trying to do is offer something different than what they have during the school year and do something a little different and exciting for them. We are getting, it seems we're getting excitement about the program, not just, well, send my kids to summer for half a day and it gives them something to do and kind of, there seems to be real interest, and there's certain choices for students and parents to select from. So we're excited to see now, after 3 years of doing this, we're growing, and we're up by over 100 students from what we've had in the past. And then we have our summer music, Hawthorn Summer Music Camps that Mr. Nadal coordinates, and he does that with Terry Plore. And summer music camp will be held July 17th to 28th at Middle School South. And large groups of rehearsal, small group sectionals, by instrument. There's music theory classes. We also here with this, we have a lot of high school students come back and work as camp counselors and work through that. So it's a pretty neat thing to watch, and they usually do a little concert. But they have a lot of fun. They play some games and things of that sort as well. It's a huge endeavor how they have that planned. But if you get a chance, if you have little ones to participate in that, it's really pretty neat. So we have some good summer programming that is offered, and they're growing. And we think they're helping us meet the needs of kids. And we're on summer break. But people, please do not talk on your phones while you're driving around school, because I still have staff that are here, and I was trying to wave somebody down earlier today and try to get them off the phone because I thought they were going to drive up on the curb while I was out for a quick walk. So if you're out there, just because school's out doesn't mean we don't have a lot of people around the schools.
We still have kids coming in for the programs. Any topics for future meetings?
I did mark the 26th for a position paper for the village as a potential topic for.
I did want to know when we would kind of get back to deciding whether these new developments like Cuneo were going to be remaining in their current boundaries or being moved to a new school. And I'm thinking if people are going to start looking at property at the Pulte development, they might want to know which school it's going to go to.
Anything else?
Do we have anything else already that was on, that had been brought up previously?
I'd have to go back and look at the list with you and see if we've.
Let me see. I have it here.
we have a list and we're trying to develop that calendar of reports and meeting things for you as well.
We have additional budget discussion, right, next meeting?
Yes, we have the budget discussion.
Approval
We'll,
of GCA, which I just got confirmation back from our vendor that is, the complete amount is passed along to the staff and they will get some clarification to us.
the other thing we need to have is the CM, meeting the CM, who will be
Interviews have gone very well.
the
Down to-
construction manager.
Right, for the construction manager, they've
Oh,
gone pretty well.
yeah. I was like, what?
Yeah, well, the initial interviews went well. We're down to 2. We're checking references and trying to see. At the next board meeting, we'll hopefully be bringing you a recommendation, not for action, but for discussion, and how at all the pros and cons of why the particular CM would be recommended and why, and what the scope of the work would be. So that will be coming at the next meeting.
Also, it's been about 3 months since we approved for the expansion of the middle dual language. The progress report on that, of what's going on?
Art is working on that, on the time, sort of the timing, what the next steps are. I don't know that I'll have anything to report in the summer, as we're
Okay.
trying to put together the plan of, when the curriculum work is starting, when would we start staffing pieces? I can bring something back. I don't know if I'd have it in the summer,
Okay,
but I will bring some.
okay.
That's not starting this coming school year. right?
No,
So
it's
you
for
got-
next, but we
you got a
still
whole
wanted
year
to
to-
make sure that
Right.
all the pieces were in place, because if they were not, then we
Right.
wouldn't start for
Right.
next year too, because that's the way we ended it. It was approved for expansion, but depending on all the pieces fell together. And then we'll have an ongoing discussion about the enrollment.
Right,
As
you'll get
well as
updates
the-
regularly on the enrollment for each meeting.
Anything else? No?
Sure.
We can adjourn.
You need to ask.
Oh, I will
Motion.
make a motion for adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn the board meeting.
Second.
You could have been faster. Do we want to have a discussion about it?
No.
Do we have to vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.